CEO of Gazelle Systems, creator of the Rhythm software, and author of Execute Without Drama. Patrick's an award-winning international speaker and a serial entrepreneur who has started and exited several multi-million-dollar companies. His prior company was 151 on the Inc. 500 list, and he is a winner of the North Carolina Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award. On our webcast today, Patrick's going to give you 2 tests to be sure you achieve your 2012 goal. Patrick, it's great to be here with you today.
Hey, Ryan. Thanks, man. Thanks for that intro. I love to hear it every time you say it. Okay, so let's get going. We got lots of people on the topic today is to help you guys think about how you know you're making the right execution decisions so that you can achieve your 2012 plan. And so the right decisions will actually help you move faster. Conversely, the wrong decisions, though, is going to slow you down and is going to ultimately create waste. So let me start with a customer story. I want to share with you how AvidXchange made the right decisions and accelerated their plan last year. So this is 2011. And so the AvidXchange story is as follows. First of all, let me introduce the company. They are a software as a service company. They're fast growing. They help companies eliminate paper through electronic invoices. They're about 11 years old. They're a dominant player in the real estate vertical. They're venture funded, so that means they get constant pressure from investors to stretch and to do better. And so they needed actually to discover some winning moves that could double their revenues. And as they thought through that, they anchored on the BHAG, and the BHAG is to build a network with 1 billion transactions or 1 billion connections. They realized, though, because of the shift they already had, that they really were in a unique position to become an online bill payment company for businesses. By the way, banks do this today. Lots of other people do this today with consumers. Many of you on the webinar today probably pay your bills online as well. But for companies, for businesses, it is much, much more complicated. So this is actually a very critical and bold move. We call it the winning move because it has potential of doubling this company's revenue in a few years. So how did they actually go faster, right? So last year they made this decision, and they had about a 12-month project plan to cut the first check or make the first online payment. And they wanted to accelerate it, and so they really, really focused on this. They chose to work on this as a key initiative for the year. And by the way, they chose to actually make some decisions to accelerate it after the first quarter. And to do that, they made trade-offs. They decided to not work on certain things so that they could actually free up more resources to do this. And these were tough choices. These were projects that were good, but just not as good as that would pay. So here's an insight for you guys. So it's easy to say no to bad stuff, right? We all know how to say no to bad projects. But really what we have to do, because we have so many opportunities in front of us, is we have to actually learn to say no to good stuff as well. So you want to learn to say no to good things, which are actually potentially in the way of great things. So we had a number of projects that they freed up resources on that then allowed them to actually do AvidPay in half the time that they planned. So it's January this year, and it's February right now, and at the end of January, AvidXchange made their first online payment. So it's totally awesome. It's a very exciting time at AvidXchange right now. So the results of this, though, to summarize at speed, accelerate the plan by 6 months or by 50% of the project time. Secondly, waste. Previously, there was various projects that were contending for resources. This slowed them down. They had lots of conversations, head-banging meetings to try and figure out which projects to take on. But once they decided and focused on this key winning move, somehow everything else got aligned. They said no to various good things to do, make way for this great thing. And like I said, it's February now, and they've already got the first payment check. So the lesson that we can take away from this is, what about you guys, right? What about us? What good things are you actually saying no to that you could say no to right now in the way of great things? Okay? So think of any good things, and they're good things, by the way, not bad things, and therefore they're hard to say no to. So the question that I wanted to ask you guys to think about during the 45 minutes or so you have with me is, how do I choose the right things, actually move faster and avoid waste? So Jim Collins says strategy is as much about saying no as it is about saying yes. Great companies don't die from lack of opportunity. They die from indigestion. I do this webinar mainly for our customers who are in the category of growth companies that don't lack opportunity, and I want to make sure we don't have indigestion. So what does indigestion look like? Well, projects that drag on in conjunction with other projects that were conceived of, and it took us so long to do that they have become good, no longer great, because the competition has really beaten us there. That really makes me mad if we have any of those. Discontinued projects, stuff that we did, and after a while we say, you know what, it's just taking too much time. We didn't count the cost. Let's just not do it. Fully executed projects that did not have enough resources to get done great. So that's what indigestion looks like, feels like. If you have any projects like that or priorities like that hanging around, you are experiencing indigestion. So this webinar is not about strategy, though. It's about executing so that you know what you can execute as far as your strategies are concerned. So opportunities are everywhere. Today we're going to help you to choose so we can actually move faster. A couple of quick thoughts here. Choosing for speed, you want to kind of anchor off the long-term decisions. So what I mean by that is you want to really think about your long-term strategy, right? Those are your long-term decisions. And if you are really focused on that, you get there faster on a straight path, no detours. Get there before your competition. Use less resources and get there faster. So why should you care? Well, you should care because if you can get there faster, you do more with less resources. And the result of that is it should show up on both your P&L, profit and loss statement, as well as your balance sheet. How does it show up on your P&L? Well, you use less resources. That means you should get to profit quicker. If you look at AvidXchange story, for example, it was going to be 12 months to get to the point where they could do this payment thing, and it only took them 6 months. So they're actually going to accelerate their revenues to this. It's going to show up on the P&L. Secondly, if you are venture funded, that means you've sold equity for capital. Less resources, less financials used means that you actually keep more of your equity if you're about to do a venture funding, or if you've already done the venture funding, you keep more of the expensive capital. So I want us to really think about how to choose for speed. When we choose for speed, well, the byproduct of choosing for speed is that we should avoid waste. When you have slower winding path that you take towards your big heritage goal or your strategies, you are wasting your resources. So I just want you to think about that today. What can you do to move faster that would actually create byproduct of avoiding your waste? So two keys to choose for speed. The first is, how do you choose the right things? How do you choose the right things to work on annually and quarterly? And then how do you choose not to work on what I call the unscheduled things, interrupt and delay you? So I use the word choose, by the way, because you do make the choice. Lots of times CEOs will tell me, well, we don't have a choice. We've got to do these projects. Actually, that's not true. We all have choices. Stopping a project may be difficult, painful, but we actually make the choice. By following the status quo, you've actually made the choice to not change that, right? So I say quarterly because quarterly is where the work actually gets done. You can plan all you want, but when it comes to doing the work, it's actually in the quarter that you actually do the work. So I'm going to go over these two keys or two texts to think of it that way. The first one is how do we choose the speed? The first one is how do we choose the right thing that we can work on quarterly? So am I choosing for speed? Now, at Excel Systems, we've had the pleasure of doing more than 1,000 planning sessions now, coaching a lot of companies, some on-site, some over the phone, but we've done more than 1,000 planning sessions. So what I would notice is that there were 4 simple things that we can look at that would help us choose for speed. These are the 4 tests I suggest. One has to do with my core customer. The other one is my big heritage goal. Next is my profit per X. Profit per X is how you actually make money. And if you want to learn more about the BHAG and profit per X, you can look up in Good to Great, Jim Collins. You can also look at Jim Collins' HBR article of how to develop your vision. And then the 4th one is winning moves. We'll talk about winning moves. That was in the poll up front that some of you guys said, hey, you know what? 57% of us feel that we need more winning moves. We'll talk about that a little bit. So let's start with the core customer. Very quickly, the definition is this is a group of customers you cannot live without, okay? And typically what we've found is that your core customers tend to be easier to service. You tend to actually make more money with them. And this is the group that you want to build your future with. So what do I mean by this? What I mean by this is not all input and requests from customers are good for you to work on, okay? So for example, if someone is in your core customer group and asks you to consider building something, or making something for them, how do you say yes or no? Well, first of all, consider strongly that it came from someone in your core customer group. Try and figure out a way to say yes to that allows you to repurpose that so it benefits all your core customers, right? So your core customers ask you for something, it's almost a yes, unless it's a real custom thing. And so you want to also do it in such a way that can benefit other core customers as well. If it's a non-core customer that asks you, well, what you want to do then is consider whether or not that request was a good idea that would actually work for your core customers, if your core customers will actually enjoy that benefit as well. If that's a yes, then I think it's an easy way to say yes to the project as well. But if a non-core customer is asking you for something that you have to invest in, that your core customers will not find as much value or benefit, then you may want to consider saying no and reserve your resources to invest in your core customers would love and enjoy. And I believe you should say no to everything else. Why do I say this? Well, I say this because not all customers are core customers. So we have, unfortunately, lots of opportunities, but not lots of resources. And so if you choose to deploy your resources more for your core customers, you should build a better future here. And you would not be building on priorities and projects which ultimately do not give you a lot of return. I want to show you this little tool. I call it a waterfall graph, right? So what you can do is take your customers and stack them up from left to right by profit. Many of you have done this before, and some of you have done this in the past. I haven't done it in a while. If you haven't done it in a while, I highly suggest you do this. It'll teach you a lot about your customers. So you kind of take your customers, you line them up. Most profitable by profit on the left, all the way down on the right. And what you'll notice when you do this, in a lot of companies, you'll notice that somewhere between 20 to 25% of your customers generate almost 80 or 90% of your profit. That's pretty amazing. And so if you do this analysis, you notice that some customers are below zero, right, which means actually cost you money to service those customers. So if you do this, the first section I've highlighted in green, these are your highly profitable customers, and I would suggest that your core customer set is probably in there somewhere. In other words, not every single customer in here in the green section is core customer, but I would believe that most of your core customers are in there. So if you're not sure who your core customers are, you might want to work on defining it, but you can probably try to figure it out by doing something like this. Then, of course, you got the unfortunate category over here, which is red. So you've heard, and people say, and I say sometimes, it's a privilege to service a customer, and that is. And by the way, for the ones in red, it truly is a privilege to service them because you are paying to service them, right? You're not making any money. Your profit is below zero. Guys, that means you're actually paying for the privilege of having this customer. I don't know, but for me, I would seriously consider shooting the reds. In other words, why are you servicing customers where you do not generate a profit, right? Seriously consider saying no to that. So as far as thinking about your annual plan is concerned, if you have projects on the list that are sucking the life out of you for customers in the red, you might want to say no to those. You might want to say no to those and work on something more important. And then the ones in the middle, the yellow ones, they're kind of barely profitable. And for those who even want more focus, I would say no to the yellows as well. In fact, I like to push most of all my clients to say, hey, why are you working on anything not in the green? Why? Right? By the way, there are no great reasons to work on the yellows. There may be good reasons to work on the yellows, but there are no great reasons to work on the yellows. And just remember, Jim Collins said that good is the enemy of great. Sometimes we can be weighed down so much by projects and priorities which are good. They're just not great, but they're taking away the resources for us to be great. Okay, another way to look at your customers is to plot them on a four-quadrant chart. The vertical axis here is about profit. So, up top is higher profit, at the bottom is lower profit. And then the horizontal axis is about easier effort. So on the left, it's higher effort, not very good. On the right is less effort, which is really good. And so the way I've labeled this is, on your top right corner, that's your high profit and low effort customers. Those are your most profitable. Then you have the next quadrant, which I've labeled yellow. The goal here is kind of work them to become A's, right? In other words, they're profitable, but I spend a lot of effort on them. Is there potentially a way for me to think about how I service them that will allow me to actually have that same level of service but a little bit less effort? That would be great. And then bottom left, we have the C's. I call them the most shootable ones. You're not profitable, and you're spending a lot of time on them. They're sucking life out of you. The question you should be asking yourself is, should I shoot the C's? And if you have a coach working with you, then I suggest that your coach hold you accountable to do something about the C's. And then the bottom right one, that's a tough one. I call them the D's. And these are the hard to shoot. These are the traps. I hear this all the time. I hear people telling me stuff like, hey, you know, I don't think I should shoot those because it doesn't take a lot of effort. By the way, effort and time are the most valuable commodities you have. Actually, more valuable than money, because money, you can go make more of it. But time is something that God gave you and me the exact same amount. Richer or poorer, we get the same amount of time. When we waste that time and resource of time, we never get that back. So don't be trapped by the D's. These are the low profit, but low effort. Makes us feel like we can do it, and it doesn't really matter a lot. So why do we not say no to our customers or say no to servicing the C's and the D's? You know, I have a coach as well, and a couple of years ago, I looked at this for myself as well in a previous company. I complained to my coach that I had these C customers. He turned to me and he said, "Why aren't you getting rid of them, Patrick?" And I kind of winced and I whined and I squirmed. You know, it just didn't feel right. It just was hard. It just didn't make sense for me to get rid of a customer. It went against everything that I was taught. It just didn't feel right. And my coach said to me, why is a tough guy like you, Patrick, squirming? Just say no. And he asked me, he said, hey, do you feel like you're in a prison by these customers? Do you feel in prison? And I said, yes, I kind of do, but I feel like I can't really leave them. And so he said, you know what, we just have to choose no. You just have to wake up and choose no. So if you're in prison by your key customers, you just need to say no and do it nicely. There are lots of ways to do it nicely, right? And by the way, the consequences to whether you chose yes or no. So the consequences of choosing no is you're going to get some short-term pain, but you are going to get long-term gain. If you choose yes, the consequences of the yes here is short-term, there's no pain, and you get a little bit of gain, but there's no pain. But you're going to endure long-term pain. So I suggest that we trade off, you know, get some short-term pain and then have long-term gain. I'm thinking that now is a good time for me to pause. I've been talking for a little bit and see if there are any questions before I move to the next couple of things on how to choose the speed.
Okay, I've got a question here, Patrick, from Debbie. She says, Patrick, can you define a winning move for me, please?
A winning move. So a winning move is a initiative. It's something that you have the ability to double your revenue in 2 to 3 years. And it may be 2 winning moves you need to double your revenue. So what I mean by that is you know, lots of times people say to me, Patrick, I'm looking for something strategic. And I'll look at it, I'll feel back that and I find that it doesn't increase their revenues. Strategic things are supposed to increase your revenue. The outcome of good strategy is growth. So my definition of a winning move is an initiative or a project that can actually significantly increase the revenues over the next 5 years, really double it. So when I coach my clients, I always ask them, do you have 2 or 3 winning moves that can double your revenues in 5 years?
Thanks, Patrick. And here's another one from Paul. Paul wants to know, some of my C customers are longtime clients. It's really hard to leave them, and it just doesn't feel right. What else can I do here?
Yeah, I get that all the time. And by the way, that was the same way I felt, Paul, when my coach made me do my waterfall chart and asked me to leave my C customers. So yes, and we are grateful. We're grateful. Lots of times it's even more difficult because these customers brought us to where we are today. Unfortunately, servicing the way we're servicing them isn't going to help us get us to the next place. So consider a couple of things. Consider, first of all, the way you're servicing them, right? Consider changing the way you service them. One of my clients actually had convinced their customers to move to self-service. And that moved away from having expensive salespeople visit them. That therefore changed the finance as far as servicing clients, and it made them go from a C to a B. So if you have C customers that are willing to work with you, maybe you can work to keep them as well and find a way to promote them to Bs or even to As. Another idea here for you is that sometimes you can find an alternative for them. One of my previous companies, we chose not to service customers anymore. We actually went to a competitor, one of my competitors, that was very, very highly talented. And I then transitioned those customers to that competitor, and he took great care of them as well. So that was a triple win, right? The competitor was very happy because he got more business, and clients ultimately became happy because they were well serviced by that competitor. And I was happy because it freed me up to go work on other more profitable things.
Here's a final question from Julie. The waterfall graph, what time frame should you graph clients for? 1 year, their contract value? What's the best there?
Yeah, I think both. I mean, I think it really depends on your business. 1 year is very typical. To me, what is the revenue that the client gives you over a year? Now, some of our customers have multi-year contracts. So if you have multi-year contracts, things like that, you basically look at the total value of the customer. So bottom line, I like for what I call contracted value versus, so it's real contracted value that the customer has versus, hey, you know what, I got to keep reselling this customer because I may or may not sell more to the customer. Okay? Any other questions, Ryan? Okay,
move on.
So let's move on. The next thing, there are 4 areas here to help you choose well, and the second one is letting the BHAG decide. So does this take you, this thing you're doing right now this year, right, does it take you closer to your BHAG, or is it a detour, right, or is it a detour? In fact, 27% of the people in the room who did the poll used the BHAG, executives used the BHAG. 11%, everything's touched by the BHAG. So that means about a third of the room, sort of our virtual room, uses your BHAG well. So for those of you who use your BHAG well, hopefully this is what you're doing. For those of you who don't use your BHAG that well, consider the following. Your BHAG is kind of like climbing up Mount Everest. In fact, Jim Collins uses this analogy for the Big Area Audacious Goal. When you climb Mount Everest, and I don't know because I've never climbed Mount Everest, but what I've read, not everyone makes it to the peak. It could be weather that stops you from getting to the peak, or if you took a detour and you got to that final place before the peak too late in the day, you won't be able to ascend to the peak either because you can't come down in time. So not everyone sees the peak. So you really can't afford many detours, or you might not see the peak before your competition gets you there. So what does this mean? This means facing the brutal facts. Does the initiative that we're in love with and working on, does it actually take us closer to a BHAG, or is it a detour? I'll tell you one of my own stories, my own case study, right? So my first company, Medisys, was an Inc. 500 firm. We made 151 on the Inc. 500 in 1996, and we would have been 77, 1997. But we were so busy, I just forgot to submit my application, or rather I didn't submit my application the next year. And so my BHAG in those days, and by the way, I didn't even know what BHAG was, okay? So, but my BHAG in those days was to build a big bang software company just like Oracle, public. We started as a consulting company. And when we had this BHAG, we started saying yes to certain things that would take us towards the BHAG. So, for example, we started saying yes to projects where we would ask the customer if we could own the code. This is in the early 90s. Not everybody cared about owning code back then. So we'd ask the customers if we could own the code. And many customers said yes to us, so we'd end up owning the code. As we got stronger, we started saying no to what we call work for hire. In other words, when you get work for hire, you get paid as a consulting firm to write software that the customer owns. So we said no to work for hire. And every time we took work that didn't own the code, it was either because I had to make payroll. Actually, it was only because I had to make payroll. So if we had enough money to make payroll, I would say no to that because it was a detour. We took as few detours as possible. And in about 4 or 5 years, we were about a $5 million firm. We had enough food to actually know completely the custom consulting work. By the way, the custom consulting business at the time was about $1.6 million. I said no, I stopped. This is the case where I actually went to a competitor and I gave them $1.6 million worth of revenue. And that sounds crazy, right? Well, it took us about 5 years to get to about $5 million in sales. For the next 2 years, we went from 5 to a run rate of 25 million in 1997. So it took us 4 to 5 years, but we went from consulting to pure software, only software, and then our growth really took off. So, we said no to revenue and to good stuff. These were not bad projects. These were great clients, like Trans-America, Rack Room Shoes, for example. Great clients we said no to so that we could really focus on ascending to our peak of being a software company. So so think about the decision that you make every day, right? What projects you have right now. Are they taking you closer to your BHAG, just like this one was, or are they taking you away or giving you a detour? And know what the detours look like. So for me, whenever I took work for hire, I knew it was a detour. But sometimes I had to do that to make payroll. Otherwise, I wouldn't do that. AvidXchange, I shared the story a bit earlier, right? They made the decision about AvidPay based on their BHAG, being able to create more connections, a bigger network, and then they realized that actually AvidPay will be a very strong way to even increase and accelerate that towards the BHAG. And so they stopped other projects that did not take them to the BHAG as fast. So the insight I have for you here is oftentimes to say no to stuff, you really need what I call pull power. Pull power is something that's pulling you towards that in the future. And that is why I believe all great companies need a BHAG. So Jim Collins taught that from a practical standpoint. What does it mean if you don't have a BHAG? Then you're lacking pull power. And if you have a very, very compelling vision future, it should then pull you and motivate you to say no to the other things. Profit per X. So how do you make money? How does it actually affect your financial engine? Over here at Gazelle Systems, profit per X is recurring revenue customers, profit per recurring revenue customers. So to avoid waste, we typically don't take on projects that don't actually influence our profit per X. So whenever we do anything in our coaching or our software, we'll ask ourselves, well, how does this actually affect the way we make money? Does this actually add to the value to our recurring revenue customers as we're working on our profit per X, or does it not? So this is what Jim Collins calls your financial engine. This is what we at Gazelle and Gazelle Systems calls your profit per X. So consider the initiatives you have. Is it helping you make money according to the strategic way that you've outlined? And the last one is winning moves. So somebody asked me about the winning moves just now, and I'm trying to hear for you again. It's a key strategy that helps you double your revenue in 3 to 5 years. So I asked these polling questions earlier because sometimes people don't know if they should be working on strategy things or execution things. If you don't have any winning moves and you need more, which 57% of the folks in the room said they did, then I think you want to work on your winning moves, because you want to work on your winning moves to give you that kind of growth, right? And so if you have winning moves, the question I would ask is, how many of you are actually working on a winning move this year right now? So if you look at your 2012 plan, how many things on there actually are to help you implement or execute on a winning move that would really take you more and more revenue over the next few years? So if you're not working on stuff that's going to help you with a move, consider stopping it and consider really working hard on the winning moves. Okay, so if you're taking a look at winning moves, I want to give you a very simple way to think about winning moves. So if you look at this 4-quadrant, on the vertical axis is impact, the horizontal axis is level of effort, right? Very similar to the other one as well. So top right quadrant, high impact, low effort. These are what I call the must-dos. If it's high impact to you and doesn't take that much effort, you got to do it. These are the must-dos. High impact, high effort. These are the might-dos. By the way, effort here also means expense. So high effort could be a lot of manpower, human power, or it could be a lot of expense. I want to give you one great example of something that was very high effort, very high impact, that helped this company do very well. Company's Apple, and the thing I'm talking about is the Apple stores. So when Steve Jobs suggested doing stores, lots of people thought he was crazy. He said, hey, consider Gateway, and Gateway had stores, look what it did for them. Then when he unveiled what an Apple store would look like, all the white space, he broke all the rules of retail. There's not enough proper square footage. And but even though it was very high effort, it was very high impact. So it made his winning move, by the way. It accounts for a lot of revenue for Apple today. So sometimes the high effort stuff is good because it creates a barrier to entry for your competition. And then we have the what I call losing moves, which is the low impact, high effort. Those are losing moves. And then we have the low impact, low effort, which I call the cheap losing moves. So if you have losing moves or cheap losing moves, you should stop them and go find yourself some high impact stuff. By the way, not having high impact stuff is not a good reason to be working on low impact stuff. Okay, I'll say that again. Not having high impact stuff to work on is not a good reason to work on low impact stuff. Okay, one more example from my Metasys days is we had an enemy in the old days, and the enemy, Metasys, by the way, the transportation software, and one of our enemies was what we call the third-party logistics firms. Because clients would outsource to them, and when they outsourced to them, they wouldn't buy from us. And so for years, this was an enemy. And in the brainstorming session, one of our team members said, you know what, we could actually sell to the 3PLs. And I almost had a heart attack when the person said that. I said, that's the enemy. And after lots of discussion, we realized that we could sell to the 3PLs, and we could actually affect more companies with less effort. There'll be actually less revenue, but highly, highly profitable revenue, much, much better margin. So in this case, selling to 3PLs, they went from being the enemy to being must-dos. So think about that as well. If you thought your annual plan was time for a reality check. If it's not for a customer, if it's not for a winning move, it doesn't get you close to your BHAG, you might want to consider stopping. And so the 4 tests for speed, we went through your core customers, BHAG, profit per X, and your winning move. And so what I like to do is kind of give you this simple tool. The 4 questions of 4 tests are up top, highlighted in green. These are the things you say yes to, right? And then highlighted at the bottom are the things that did not make the list. Lots of times people are afraid to say no to stuff because they're afraid that these ideas will go away. First of all, some of these ideas should go away, but for the ideas that shouldn't go away, just because you don't have enough resources, I would put it on a parking lot. So this is your won't list. It's also a parking lot. And tag a future date to discuss it so you may consider it in a future time. And then that way it doesn't get lost. It won't be forgotten forever. So that's the first part of what I wanted to cover, of how to choose the right things to go faster and get you to your year stronger. I'm going to pause for some questions now as well, Ryan.
Yeah, so the first question is from Michael. He's asking, we're in the middle of the first quarter. If I run these tests with my team and find out that I'm focusing on the wrong things, should I make the adjustment now or wait till fix it in the next quarter?
Well, I would ask you the question actually of, are you throwing away more good money after bad money? So, I said earlier, you shouldn't be looking at anything that's low impact. You probably shouldn't be looking at anything right now either that when you've gone through this filter of questions and you come to realization that it wasn't really good to work on. So, yes, I think if you've decided or figured out that there's stuff on your list that is not great to work on, I would stop it right now.
Okay, the next question is from Sergio. He says, if we do not have a BHAG and profit per X, how should we go about working on it for my company?
So Jim Collins calls this your envision future. I mentioned it earlier that, I believe all great companies need one. So if you don't have a BHAG, you really should work on it. You really should work on creating one. Now, of course, you can call me on my team. We can help you with that. You can also go to jimcollins.com, and he's got a couple of tools there that you can look at. The article I mentioned earlier, Jim Collins' HBR, Harvard Business Review article, it's called Building a Company's Vision. I suggest you start there as well. Kind of read through that and see if that's helpful to you.
And one more, this one's from Michael. Is acquisitions a winning move?
That's a great question. I don't consider acquisitions a winning move. I consider acquisition execution of a winning move. So what I mean by that is, for example, let's just say that you've decided a winning move is to go attack the banking industry for some type of service, right? That's the winning move that you're going to work on. So you can be faced with the build-buy question. If you could acquire someone to get you that faster, that's the execution towards a winning move, right? So in this case, in this example, the acquisition help you to implement the strategy versus saying, hey, you know what, I'm just going to go buy something, right? Just going to buy something is not strategic. One thing that you see in the industry quite a bit too is this concept of rolling up. Rolling up is a strategic focus that says, I'm going to roll up a bunch of guys that look like me so we have much more revenue and we can take the operational efficiencies. That is a strategy. So for example, if you said, I want to build my company into a roll-up, therefore, I'm going to go on an acquisition trail. Again, those acquisitions are to help you implement the strategy of being a roll-up. That's a great question, thank you, because I do see some companies, unfortunately, running on a strategy and then saying, okay, I think we're just going to go buy somebody. I'm like, well, okay, but before you go buy anybody, like, what are you trying to build?
Okay, let's keep moving.
Okay, so the final thing I wanted to share with you is the concept of won't power. So won't power is about choosing not to work on the unscheduled things, the stuff that slows you down. And so I kind of call this the pretty butterfly problem. You know, those ideas that we come up with that interrupt us during the quarter. And yes, it's kind of the guys on the phone call with me right now, it's our CEOs that have this problem, you know. So I call it won't power because, you know, I was chatting with my wife, Pei. And for those of you who know me, you know my wife's name is Pei because she's the payee and I am the payer. By the way, that's totally true. Her name is Pei. So I'm asking Pei about, you know, how we need to have the willpower to not eat certain things so that so we can have a better year for our diet plan, right? And so we're talking about all these things and why we don't have enough willpower. My little 9-year-old Nicole looks up at me and says, Daddy, why do you and Mommy keep saying willpower? Isn't it won't power? And so we laughed and we said, yeah, baby, you bet it is. You know, it's won't power. So our clients actually who are growing very fast have a lot of opportunities. And for most of you, you've already set the quarter. What happens is during the quarter, these truth lies show up. And these are ideas that actually torpedo the things that you have already decided that were important. Right? The last time I checked, those were called priorities. And so you need won't power. I know it's easier said than done. But how do you get won't power, by the way? And by the way, as I mentioned before, the culprits of these won't power pretty butterfly things that torpedo projects are usually, unfortunately, the CEOs. So how do you guys stop yourselves, right? Well, first, you have to build your plan. You do all the things that I showed you earlier today, right? And anchor your plan on strategy. Then you can believe in your plan. So your team and you get committed to this plan. And there's no other way to do this than having an execution planning so that everyone believes in this plan, right? Then you commit to this plan together. You empower your team to stop each other. If it comes up and it ain't on the plan, just don't do it. Like put it in the parking lot so the idea won't get lost, so that pretty butterfly won't fly away or get popped, okay? So I'm really excited because iPad Rhythm's coming out. And this is one of the screenshots from iPad Rhythm. And iPad Rhythm's coming out. It'll be out. It's going to hopefully hit the Apple Store in a week or two, and hopefully it'll make it out either February or March. So my customers on the call, I know you guys are really excited waiting for this app. And just to share with you, you know, we are the culprits, and I'll tell myself. And you know, Ryan, who introduced me on the call today, he's also our product manager. And I wanted to add a new feature to Rhythm iPad about a month and a half ago, just a tiny one. And that's, by the way, a pretty butterfly, right? So this thing comes up, and I say, hey, you know, I want to add this thing. I just realized something. We're going to add to this thing, to this product. And Ryan says no to me. My goodness, he says no to me. And I'm like, what do you mean by no, right? I'm the boss. I mean, yeah, you got to say yes. And Ryan says, no, you can't do that. And I said to Ryan, I said, dude, it's just a menu item. There's even no programming here. There's no new screen. It's just a menu item. And Ryan says, Patrick, you know fully well that a menu item means programming. I said, I know, but there's like no new screens. There's no massive programming. And Ryan said, Patrick, no, next release. Please, just no, next release. I said, Ryan, I'm begging you. He says, no, next release. By the way, I thank Ryan because he saved our ship date. That's a pretty butterfly. Pretty butterflies always look good, sound good, taste good until you do them. If we had done that thing I asked him to do, I would not be sitting here or standing here telling you that iPad Rhythm is ready to get birthed in the next couple of weeks. It probably would have delayed this by a couple of months. So he saved my ship date because it is too easy to say yes to me. Just like you guys on the phone call with me, it's too easy to say yes to you, especially if your title is CEO or president or founder or co-founder or head honcho in any category, okay? Really hard to say no to you. So you have to surround yourself with folks who say no to you. Forget about the yes men. The day has come for the no men or the no women, right? So think hard and ask your team to empower your team to say no to you. By the way, that only happens if everyone is committed to and believes in a quality plan. So one of my clients just interviewed and hired a very expensive, very experienced, expensive too, but very experienced executive assistant. Was previously an executive assistant to the CEO of a hot public company. And when she was interviewing, she said, I'm going to make sure everything you do focus on your strategy. So this is what she said to the CEO who hired her. And if it's not on your strategy, it goes off your plate, goes on my plate. My job is to keep you focused on the most important things. That's great advice, by the way. She got hired. She is his new no man, or I should say in this case, no woman. So the no, the won't do list, the won't list is key to stop you from interrupting your priorities. By the way, the interruptions of priorities I found are the things that cause you the most weight. Because first of all, it slows down stuff. Anytime you slow down your speed, you are increasing your weight. And again, add it to your won't list. By the way, at this point in time, I want to ask CEOs in the room, do you have any hidden pet projects? Because most CEOs have them. And when I'm coaching a client and I ask this question in a session, I smile across the face and I ask, are there any hidden pet projects? Hidden pet projects are the ones that didn't make the open list, that didn't make the top 5 of everybody's list. But in the back of your mind, you kind of say, well, we're going to go do that anyway. Well, unfortunately, we're going to go do that anyway means you're going to torpedo somebody in week 2 or week 3 of the quarter. So if you have any hidden pet projects, you need to get them on the table right now and put them on your won't-do list. Or you discuss it with your team to figure out if you're going to do them or not. I always like to make sure that our clients are taken care of, not just our friends. So for our Rhythm clients, I want to give you something special. You already have a won't-do list. You already have a won't list, by the way. So where's that won't list? Well, this you recognize as your company energy map, right? It's your energy map dashboard. It shows the company priorities for the quarter, and every square on here shows you a personal priority that somebody on the team is looking at. So if it's not on your energy map, guys, it is on your won't list. So you already have a won't list. Do not do anything that's not on your energy map. When you have your weekly meetings and discuss how the company's doing, make sure that the priorities you're talking about are already on this energy map. At the very beginning of the quarter, you guys built this. You guys did your energy test. You guys did your alignment test. You guys should be committed to it. So for any back pocket priorities or hidden priorities, you should lose them now. Okay, so real quick recap. What we did today is we covered 2 things. So we talked about how to execute for speed. The 2 things was, first, there are 4 areas I gave you, 4 tests I gave you that's on that cheat sheet on that won't list to choose to work on the right thing. And that has to do with whether it benefits your core customers, does it help you with BHAG, was it a detour, is it how you've started teaching you with money, and does it help you with maybe move? And as a byproduct of this webcast, a webinar, 57% of the folks in the room should also consider spending some time this quarter or this year working on developing the movement. And then the second thing is the willpower, right? So say no to pretty butterflies. Choose not to work on scheduled things. Please don't do those because those interrupt and delay priorities, creating weight. We have a survey that's going to come up. I'd love for you to stay on and help us with the survey. It'll pop up and you can kind of give us some thoughts. It would be very helpful. I do these once a quarter or twice a quarter, and my goal is to make them highly educational to help you solve problems. I got a blog if you want to get more of the stuff, and of course my email if you want to email me. I want to end though with a story about Apple, and I just want to make sure you guys stay on to help with the survey. So Steve Jobs, created the most valuable company in the world by saying no a lot. He's quoted as saying, we say no to a lot of good ideas, just that these ideas are just not as good as the ideas that we said yes to. Now, when Steve Jobs came back to Apple in 1997 as the interim CEO, people don't remember this, but Apple was dying. Apple was so broken it couldn't be sold. They had 90 days of cash left. They had 400 million stuck in inventory. People weren't buying Macs. Their market share was an all-time low. So Steve Jobs came in, and one of the many questions he asked was he looked at all the products they had, and they had a lot of products. They had a lot of different variety of Macintoshes. And he asked the question, he said, why do we need all these products? We really don't. And so, and by the way, you can read about the story in his bio, but there are a bunch of books written on Jobs, and this actual story is just covered in a couple of the books. But the bio that just came out recently, I think it's a great read. And so he pulled out and he drew this 4-quadrant chart. He basically said, guys, we have 2 types of customers, okay? We have consumers and we have pros. When he said pros, he meant professionals. And they only need 2 types of machines. They either need a desktop or they need a laptop. All they need. So he asked the question, he said, so why the heck do we have more than 4 products? And so everyone was stunned. But all of a sudden at Apple, everyone became sharply focused on these 4 squares, on having one great product for each of these 4 squares. And then he killed a bunch of things, you know. He killed the Newton. He killed the laser printer. So in the old days, Apple used to actually used to make laser printers. They were called style writers. He killed those. And then he killed a bunch of Macs. By the way, by shutting down the Newton, he freed up some good engineers to work on new stuff. And these great engineers worked on new mobile devices that showed up later as the iPhone and the iPad. So again, you know, these were good things. They were in the way of great things. I think we all would agree that the iPhone and iPad kind of make that great category. The Newton, not so, even though I have 2 of them. And so when he did all this stuff, inventory went from 400 million to 100 million overnight. He had to make some tough decisions too, by the way. He laid off about 3,000 people. But here are the results. So how does speed and killing waste and all that help you achieve financial returns? Here are the numbers, okay? In 1997, when Apple took on the job, when Jobs came back to Apple as the interim CEO, Apple lost $1.04 billion. The following year, 1998, his first full fiscal year at Apple, Apple made a profit of $309 million. So I just want you guys to really, really understand that. That is a swing of $1.3 billion in about a year, right? Went from losing $1 billion to making $300 million. That is a swing of $1.3 billion. Okay, so with that, thank you very much for attending the webcast. Please wait for the survey. And if you have any questions, now's a great time for me to take the questions as well.
Here's one from Tim Patrick. He says, you know, your won't power seems so simple. Why don't more people do this?
Well, yeah, it's simple, right? Because it came from my 9-year-old. Anyway, it takes 2 things to do this, okay? It takes 2 things. First, it takes guts. I mean, you know, you're going to make a ton of people mad when you start doing this won't stuff. By the way, the other person you're going to make mad is you, because you're the one that's going to come up with stuff that you're going to empower people to say no to. And then, you know, you just need to, it's simple, but it's hard to do. You need no men or people who stand up to you and give you brutal facts and say yes versus saying yes to you and whining later. Do you notice that most yes men end up whining? You know, kind of say yes to you and then they walk out and whine later versus the folks who stand up to you and say no. By the way, I don't want people to just say no to me. I want them to give me the brutal facts. I mean, like when Ryan said no to me about those features I wanted to add in, the brutal fact was that it would delay my ship date, right? So you got to not just say no, you got to also give up the brutal facts.
And I got another one here from Cheryl. She's asking, how do you get no people, those no people that you described earlier? How do you get them?
Okay, so no people is something you have to build, right? You have to build. You have to encourage it. So you take the opportunity to thank people for letting the emperor know he has no clothes, and you tell stories and give people courage so that they'll be rewarded. So actually, just to give you an example, you know, this week I shared something with my team. We had a monthly team meeting, and I shared with them that when you tell me I'm wrong, I will be annoyed or angry. I actually used the example I gave you just now with Ryan. I said, you know, when you tell me something that I'm wrong in, I will be annoyed and angry. Why? Because I'm human. I'm human, okay? I'm no different from any of you guys on the phone with me. So when you present me with something that tells me I'm wrong or stops me, I'm going to get angry. I'm going to know. If you stop right there, our working relationship is a 3 from a scale of 1 to 10. If you push past that first annoyance, I would say that now our working relationship is at a 6 or 7. Okay. By the way, if it's something important, I'll probably get angry a second time when you push that and say, just like with Ryan, he pushed that a number of times. And it wasn't just, hey, boss, you know, we can't do that or miss a shift. I go, yeah, okay, fine. No, I said, no. You don't understand, Ryan. It's just a tiny little thing. No programming. It's all crap, right? But basically, he pushed past the second in many ways, even the third time, to get me to really see it. That's why I explained to my team, when you push past that first annoyance, our working relationship is a 6 or 7. You push past that second I'm annoyed, and now we have a 9 to 10 level working relationship. And I thank you. So that message is what I would share with my team, and I would suggest you share a very similar message in your own way with your team and share that often, so that people will be motivated to stand up and say yes to say no to you.
Well, thanks, Patrick. That's all the time that we have for questions today. And this concludes our webcast for the day. Thanks so much, Patrick, and thanks to all of you for joining us. Please help us by taking 1 minute to give us some feedback on the webcast after it completes. You'll see a screen with a survey after you close the webcast. This webcast was recorded, and you'll receive a link to the recording as soon as it is available. So again, thank you very much, and we hope you all have a wonderful day.